Hey guys, welcome back to Pistons Talk Podcast. Hope you guys are having a great Sunday evening so far. We're starting a little bit early, starting at 6 because the Lions do play at 8. And I think you guys would probably rather watch the Lions and listen to my dumbass. 100% understand that. But we do have a very special guest on today's show. He's a beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com, Eric Vincent. Eric, welcome back to the show, man.
Appreciate you for having me, man. Hey, don't sell yourself short. This is must-see TV, brother. Hey, anytime Sunday is going down, people got to be here. Piston fans, we appreciate your time.
Hey man, I understand. Like the Lions are playing, people want to watch it. I'm trying to be respectful of people watching the Lions. I know there's some people that are just absolutely like all in on like these watch parties. I don't think I'm that far into listening to other people talk about the game. I'd much rather just watch something else or maybe watch a podcast like this. Hey, you never know. But we do have a really good show. We do have some topics. It
There
is
you
off
go.
season, so these are some off-season topic, so I do apologize that there isn't really nothing to talk about, but we should be getting training camp in the next couple of weeks. But let's get into it, man, because I think this is going to be a really fun one. So I was reading over at BleacherReport.com, and they had your Detroit Pistons as the second best rebuilding team. So I wanted to kind of get your just thoughts on Bleacher Report ranking the Detroit Pistons as the second best rebuilding team in the NBA.
I was okay with it. I understand the placing for it. It sucks a little bit that they're still kind of in this conversation because when the rebuild started, they were with the likes of the Thunder, the Cavaliers, kind of to an extent, and now they're kind of hanging around with some other teams at this moment. I understand the placing. I get being behind San Antonio. I like the last line that they had in the article. Like they would still be in a very high position right now, even if they didn't have Victor Wembanyama. Like I love the guard they picked up, Castle. I love a lot of the assets that they picked up through time over these past several years. I think they're in a really good position to contend in the West over the next few years. I think they're building in the right direction. And the Pistons, it kind of makes sense with where they're at. Again, they should still be stuck, unfortunately, in this conversation, but I get it. Again, they have a lot of young talent that they had to bring in, having to start over with a new coach, starting over with a new regime, basically hitting reset again at this point. It's kind of a rebuild of the restoration of Troy Weaver's vision. Some of the other teams out there kind of bothered me. Like I would put Utah a lot higher. Like I just think they're in a better position than who was it that I didn't really like? I think it was not Portland. I want to say, the Wizards. I think the Wizards are way too high. Like I don't think the Wizards are in a good position right now. I would have put them in the honorable mention conversation. Like I just don't think they're in the discussion with the five teams that are like around them right now. Especially when Troy Weaver is now helping lead that, when he just kind of failed with the different situation with the Pistons. But I like where the Pistons are at. Again, when you have a star in the rise with Cade Cunningham, when you've got complementary pieces around him, and people are really high on the resources that have been placed around this team. So I get it. I'm okay with 2. I think it's a fair spot for him.
For people that are probably going to listen on the audio side, because I know a lot of people get frustrated that I'm just so used to just talking to people that are watching live, but the rebuilding rings from Bleacher Report are San Antonio 1, Detroit Pistons 2, Portland Trailblazers 3, Washington Wizards 4, and Brooklyn Nets 5. To your point, I don't really understand why the Wizards are in here. I did see, though, I want to give Rockets Twitter some credit. Houston Rockets fans were actually upset that they weren't on this list. And I was like, you guys just won like over 30 games. I don't really see you guys as a rebuilding team anymore. And to your point, like I would throw,
Right.
Toronto in this top 5 because I think
Yeah.
they're going to be going through a rebuild now that they traded OG Anunoby. Even though like it kind of seemed like they were retooling, like getting RJ Barrett and Emmanuel quickly, I still kind of consider them into that rebuilding phase, if you will.
No, I agree with you 100%. I love where Portland is at. I think they're really in a good position. Scoot Henderson is my pick for most improved player. I really think he can take off and do some good damage in the West. I don't know about Washington. I just think they have a lot of pieces that kind of don't make sense right now. It feels like Weaver is doing the big man fetish again over there with them. And then obviously Summer League is Summer League, but when Sar is kind of not really shining the way we expected him to, you got to hesitate a little bit to what they're doing, especially when the other teams around, like the Nets having all the picks that they got out of the Mikal Bridges trade, obviously with the Spurs, obviously with where the Pistons are, obviously with where the Blazers are. I just think they're way more ahead. Like, again, I understand maybe putting the Wizards in the honorable mention category, but yeah, I would put Toronto and Utah ahead of them at the 4th spot, or even at 5. I don't know about their spot right now. Wizards Twitter, don't come after me. I'm just giving my opinion. I'm sorry.
Yeah, honestly, I don't really think Wizards Twitter would probably be too mad at your stance on it, because they just started rebuilding, and like it doesn't help that
Right.
you tried to get Evan Fournier and he said no. He said, I want to go play overseas. And
Right.
it's just like we make like jokes about Troy sometimes on this YouTube channel. I'm sure, even like Pistons fans in the Pistons community make jokes about Troy Weaver. Like, I did not see Sadiq Bey going to Washington, even though he's from there. Like, I made a joke. I was like, watch them sign Sadiq. They signed Sadiq. It's just like, I mean, what are you going to do next? Like, go sign Josh Jackson and Jahlil Okafor? Like, what are we doing?
Go right back down the same path. Like, I didn't get it. Yeah, I liked Jordan Poole going over there. Like, it made sense for him to get a fresh start in a different situation. But like everything around that just hasn't made sense. Like, I kind of like Johnny Davis a little bit, but I don't know where that's going at this point with him. I don't even know how much longer he's going to be in that jersey for them. Like, honestly, I don't know. They got a lot of pieces that don't make sense. And then obviously the City Pay and those kind of things, even Marvin Bagley still being there, Isaiah Livers, just a lot of the former Pistons going back under the tutelage of Weaver is just, it's a little comical. But hey, best of luck to the Wizards. Hopefully they figure it out. But I get where the Pistons are at. 2 makes sense for them.
Yeah, same here. I did want to put it on the screen because I feel like when people are watching, some people are just like visual people, understand it. That's why I make these graphics for you guys.
That's me. That's me.
100%, man. I was just like so shocked to see, like, if you go on my posted, you can see like Rockets fans are like, they were like upset that they weren't mentioned in the top 5 rebuilding. Like, they were like really upset, like had people that like beat reporters retweeting that, like, really, we're not a rebuilding team anymore. Like, that's news to me. I was like, wow, okay.
That's good news for y'all. Y'all should be celebrating doing kickstands right now. Yeah, I don't think they're in the honorable mention state. Again, they put a lot of their stock into a Jalen Green, and the fact that they were able to win and succeed without predicating so much on him. Like Sengun is their best player, and I don't really think it's close at this point right now. He was fantastic when he was healthy. Then you can add those veteran pieces like what's his name? Fred VanVleet and even Dylan Brooks, like adding those veteran pieces to complement those guys, and then to see the wins go with it. It's not like they struggled under their new coach and like trying to figure things out. Like, things made sense. They worked well under Udoka. They played better defense, and then they had a pretty good draft as well. So, take a lap, Rockets fans. You did a good job. Y'all are on the right path.
Yeah, I was like, I think you guys are out of the rebuilding phase. So that's not something you should be upset about, I think, in my opinion. But I thought it was pretty funny that they were actually upset that they weren't mentioned. Even like some Hornets fans too. I was like, I think you guys will be better with the brand new head coach, Miles Bridges, LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller. They're going to take a step. Like, all the teams that weren't mentioned were actually upset. And I was just like, you guys are, I think you'll be ahead. I think you'll be competing for at least a play-in spot, in my opinion.
Yes. That's another team I wanted to put up there. Yeah, Charlotte, I think, is really the good spot. As long as LaMelo is healthy, I do like the new coach. I wanted Brandon Miller so bad on this team. I thought he would have been a perfect fit. I was arguing with Pistons fans for the longest, saying that he doesn't fit. He's overrated. Bro, shut up. He is a fantastic player. I think he's going to work well with Charlotte. I like what they're doing right now.
Yeah, same here. I was a really big Brandon Miller. Brandon Miller and Scoot were my 2 guys in that draft, and I know Scoot didn't have the season that I thought, some people were kind of like thinking he would have, but I think he'll be all right. I think Chauncey's the perfect coach to coach him because, he's had his highs, his lows, so he could probably relate to him more than anybody. And I think he'll do good. Brandon Miller just looks like a bona fide star, in my opinion, man. Like, that kid's going to be special.
Man, the way he came on strong the second half of the year, like, it was fantastic watching that. Like, as he kind of came out of nowhere, he was getting all the slander for calling Paul George his GOAT, but he kind of had some moments where he was kind of floating and looking smooth like Paul George. I love the way he was able to play in transition. He created his own shot, did a really good job playing defense, transition defense. He had it all. I don't know what fans saw from him that didn't think that he would have fit. He was the best shooter coming out of college that year when he was drafted. I don't know what y'all saw, but I wanted him bad on this team. I think he made the most sense. And I think he's in a great spot right now with Charlotte.
I think it was more of the off the court stuff Pistons fans get weird about because the talent wise, the talent was there. But I remember a lot of Pistons fans saying like, "Oh, well, we don't want that mess. We don't want that distraction." I was like, we would be damn lucky to get a guy of that caliber. I'm just telling you, like, instead of having Isaiah Livers, you could have had Brandon Miller next to Cade. And who knows, maybe you get from 14 to maybe 25 wins. You never really know. Those two could click. Like, I don't know. Like the just the conversations last year were so messy among just like draft Twitter and even Pistons Twitter too. But we can move on because I don't want to hype on Brandon Miller because I'll get depressed.
No worries. Let's do that.
So with it being off season, we see a lot of these publications come up with really fun articles. And then this is another Bleacher Report because I know a lot of people are like, where's this coming from? You know, trade targets. And they had 3 names for the Detroit Pistons to possibly trade for. And the 3 names that Bleacher Report had in their article were Karl Anthony Towns, Brandon Ingram, and Corey Kispert. So I want to ask you, out of these 3 names, which one intrigues you the most?
The most intriguing, it would be the biggest fish of them all. I mean, I think Cat would be perfect here. It's going to take a lot to get him. I just don't see that happening, but the most intriguing would obviously be him. I think he does a great job being able to stretch the floor. Showed out as one of the best shooters in all of basketball last season. Kind of was able to complement Rudy Gobert, which a lot of people thought was going to be a question mark with Minnesota. And I don't know. I think I'm honestly kind of surprised he's even a trade target at this point. I think as Minnesota is ascending, I feel like they would want to hold on to him and kind of keep that core together, especially as Anthony Edwards is on an upward trajectory. I don't really understand why he would be on the block right now. But if there's a way you could go get Cat, I wouldn't blame them at all. I think Karl Anthony Towns is a fantastic player. You know, he does funny stuff that people clown on social media, but I just think as an overall player, he fits. He makes a lot of sense. He can create his own shot, which is something that this front court needs desperately. I think he makes a lot of sense. Brandon Ingram, I like him a lot too. His contract kind of worries me just because he's on what? I think he has a year left on it. So if you were to trade for him, you basically have to kind of guarantee an ability to re-sign him. And I don't know if the Pistons are going to be good enough to talk him into doing that based on where they are. Like if they win 30 games, we'll be happy. But will he be happy enough to want to come back? That's what I'm worried about with him. And that's kind of been my conversation kind of all off season. Kispert, I think, is a good player. He should want to come here for the many times that he's had to guard Cade Cunningham and get baptized by him. I still remember that rookie year dunk that he had on him on the road. That was fantastic. I like Kispert a lot. I think he'd be a good role player. I think he would make sense for kind of what they need. If you kind of plug him on the bench, he'd be a good staggered rotation piece for the front court or the back court, depending on where you play him. But yeah, the most intriguing to me for sure will be Karl Anthony Towns.
I agree there with Cat, especially the way the NBA is heading. Like a lot of teams now are 4 out or 5 out. And in my opinion, Cat is the best stretch 5 in the NBA. I don't even think it's close. I think the main reason why Bleacher Report had him probably in a trade target for the Detroit Pistons is one, when you look at the contract, it's really huge. And let's say Minnesota has a down year. Do they really want to get into that second apron tax? Like, do they really want to keep that team together? Mm-hmm. Now, don't get me wrong. Minnesota has a lot of talent. Like you mentioned Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, Rudy Gobert. Like, it's a very good team, and I really like their coach in Chris Finch. Like, I think he's a really underrated coach. People don't really talk about him enough in terms of just like being like one of the top tier coaches. I think he's on his way personally. But I think the reason why Bleacher Report had that in there is just because of the contract. And, you know, if it doesn't work and they don't, you know, make an NBA finals or at least win a championship, that's a very expensive team to, you know, keep together. And maybe they want to get some draft picks to, you know, restock their cupboard because it's completely bare of first round picks. I think that's kind of like the thinking Bleacher Report was having. And maybe the Pistons could kind of, after maybe the Isaiah Stewart, you know, protections are gone. You look down that road, but hey, man, you never really know. I do agree. I think Cat would probably be the most desirable. Ingram, I feel like I've talked about Brandon Ingram at nauseum this offseason, Eric. I don't know about you, writing articles over at Clutch Points.
Yes.
It seems like if Trajan Langdon wasn't here, I don't think there would be so much noise about Brandon Ingram.
Absolutely.
Obviously, Trajan was there when they acquired him for a trade. He knows him very well. Obviously, the optics are, he wants, max money, and the Pelicans aren't really willing to give him what he wants. And he's got one more year left on his deal. And you look at the Pelicans roster, much like Minnesota, a very expensive roster, just traded for DeJounte Murray. Keep an eye on them. You never know. Like you said, if they underperform, 30 wins, I think would be unacceptable for a team that expensive with so much star power. Right. Now, is he a player that you try to trade for and plug in? Not really sure after acquiring Tobias Harris. I don't know. Yeah. I really don't know. I like him as a player. I think he's nice, but I think there are clear signs of health because he's not always available.
Right.
And when you're asking for that max type of money, I think most fans would probably want 65 to 70 games out of you a year. And I don't really know if Brandon Ingram is durable enough to, give that to an organization, especially if he came to Detroit. I think he would probably be 1B to Cade Cunningham. Is he willing to, take those 20 to 25 shots a night or, take on the best, be a defensive menace out there, lock down, play a full 48 minutes, don't take plays off. I'm not really sure if Brandon Ingram could do that night in and night out and stay healthy consistently. I think Corey Kispert on this list is probably the most realistic. Right. If you're looking for a guy that's just a smart, sound basketball player, I think Corey Kispert's kind of underrated in a sense. He's not a household name by any means, but I think he could definitely give the Pistons some good minutes off the bench, or whether you want to start him or not.
I've definitely been back and forth on Ingram a lot. I've been solidified in my pick where I just don't think it would make sense to go after him right now. I really thought he was going to be on the move too. There was rumors that Cleveland was interested in him, and I thought that was a perfect landing spot for him. I'm shocked that didn't happen. There are other teams who could have used him as that stretch 3-4 good shooter, good shot creator on his own, and even got better as a passer too. Not the best defender, but I think his offensive skill set kind of makes up for that, especially when you if you were to go to a Cleveland, if you have those kind of defenders around you, you're not really going to rely on him to be this lockdown, shutdown dude. It's just not going to happen. But for the Pistons, per se, like you said, when you've been in a situation where New Orleans for a while was rebuilding, and then they're on a trajectory where they're starting to win and put some momentum together, I don't know if he's going to be excited to come to a place like Detroit where he could succeed. And I think it could work with Cade Cunningham. I don't think that would be a conflict of their skill sets, but it's in terms of where they are as a team. Like I said, I think 30 wins is obviously a positive sign based on what we've seen over the past few seasons. But for him, or for a player like him of his stature, who, again, he's still relatively young, which is crazy. It feels like he's been in the league for 15 years. But for me, I just don't think he would want to stick around based on what his timeline looks like. And if you were to trade for him to make that happen, you would have to give up a lot and try to guarantee a contract. I just don't see that happening for him. He makes more sense on a team that's maybe a piece or two away to kind of set established, or stick with New Orleans. I think they're in a good position too to kind of break through as one of those up and coming teams in the West. So obviously the other Kispert makes the most sense. Those other two just kind of seem like pie in the sky dreams. Because I can see them on the move, but I don't know if the Pistons would be the most likely spot for them to end up.
Troy Weaver putting protections on that pick has actually kind of kept the Pistons out of trouble, to say.
Yeah.
Because, I think a lot of fans, and I know this is completely off topic of what these guys were talking about, but, anytime I make a video or, do a podcast topic about, a big name like an Ingram or Karl Anthony Towns, the one comment I get is, that'd be another Blake Griffin move. You trade all your assets. You might win a couple of games, but you're not going to win a championship because of it. Right. Those are win now moves. We're not ready for win now moves. We're ready for marginal moves to keep, stacking more than, 20 wins in a season. Let's try to get to 30 and see where we're at and evaluate that. which I tend to agree with the fans. Like Cat, to me, I think would be a win now move. You think you're Karl Anthony Towns away from, possibly, making an Eastern Conference Finals or trying to compete for an NBA Finals. Like, I don't think any of these guys, if you trade for them now, that the Pistons would win a championship right off the bat. I think they need more talent. They need the guys around them, their core, to develop more to kind of give you a better indication of where this team could, be, 3-4 years out.
That Blake Griffin comparison is so spot on. Because you're in a position now. I mean, obviously, I remember what Blake did. He was sensational. He was a clear-cut best player on that team. And if, granted, it wouldn't be a terrible thing to have Cat come in with the Pistons and be the best player, but the most important player on that team is Cade Cunningham. You need to see what you have in him. You need to see Cade and Ivy kind of take that next step. You need to see Duren kind of show that he's one of the most valuable pieces moving forward with this franchise. And if you're leaning solely on one of those two guys, that means something else happened bad with the other 2 or 3 that you still have, like Asar as well. So I think a lot has to still be invested into those young pieces that they brought in. Again, those kind of guys would help, but I don't think it lines up with their timeline in any way, shape, or form at this moment. It doesn't make sense. Tobias is perfect based on what they need, based on the contract he got. These are just, like I said, they just seem like pie in the sky. Again, I understand the scenario of them moving. I just don't see it happening with the Pistons.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think fun to write about, fun to talk about, but just for Pistons fans, because I know Pistons fans this week, they're like, where the hell is this coming from? It's Bleacher Report, being Bleacher Report, getting us excited. We got training camp. We got training camp in like less than 3 weeks, man. I'm ready to overreact to some training camp clips. I'm so ready. I'm so there. Honestly, man, I miss basketball so much, but
we getting close, man. Right. That's right. We're right there. We're getting close.
So obviously we've talked about Cade Cunningham a lot on this YouTube channel, as to be expected, franchise player. So Bleacher Report had an article and they're predicting him to make his first All-Star game. So I want to know if you think that is a possibility for Cade Cunningham this season.
It's definitely a possibility. I don't think that's a stretch. Obviously, as Piston fans and supporters and watchers, we know what Cade Cunningham stands for. We know what his ceiling is. There was a fun little tweet that went out about Cade, LaMelo, and 2 other guards I can't remember about their ceiling. And I think Cade has the highest. I think Halliburton and Tyrese Maxey. Those are the 4. And I think he has the highest ceiling of all 4 of those guys. It's a possibility. I just think it's kind of slim still at this moment. Looking at it doesn't have anything to do with him. I think he's going to perform at an all-star level. We just saw him do it last season with the lack of support that he had, averaging almost 23 points a game, 7.5 dimes. He was top 10 in assists. Again, I still think he's a super underrated defender. But unfortunately, just looking at the landscape of the Eastern Conference, which keeps getting better and better and better as off seasons come and go, he's got a lot of guys that he's got to beat out. He's got to get past Dame Lillard in Milwaukee. He's got to get past Halliburton. He's got to get past Tyrese Maxey. He's got to get past Trae Young. He's got to get past the duo in Cleveland. Like, it's a lot of names that, again, I think he can be better than at some point in his career, but it's going to determine on this team success as well, as we've seen with things like Rookie of the Year kind of get taken from him because of team success. I think this is going to kind of play against him as well. That's not to say that the Pistons need to be a top 5 seed. Like, let's say if Cade is like the 8th, if the Pistons are 8th or 9th seed, and I don't know, like say Atlanta and all those teams are like kind of teetering around like 6, 7, 8, 9. Maybe there's a range or an argument that Cade has, but it's still top heavy where those teams that are in the top 3, 4 seeds, they have guards that are playing at all-star levels. So Cade is going to have to do a lot in order to make that happen. He's going to have to not just put up his stats. He's going to have to rack up some signature wins where he's the reason to why they're making those moves in that progression. Like, I keep thinking back to the Miami game last season. Cade played fantastic, but he missed a shot the last second. It kind of like honed in on him, and he was obviously emotional about it. He needs some of those moments where he's the one that's putting the team on his back and carrying them to these wins. And he hasn't had that yet. I understand why, but I just think it's a tall task ahead of him right now, just because of how strong the Eastern Conference is at this moment.
I do agree with you, and Bleacher Report had a full list of players that they think that could make the All-Star team this year. So we can go through it. So I think Victor Wembanyama is going to make an All-Star team. I think it's just any like article list, they have him like top 3 in like every category. Like they think like Rudy Gobert's not going to win Defensive Player years anymore. I think Victor is probably going to win it because he's just a beast.
He should have won this year, I think.
Yeah, he really should. Jalen Williams from the Oklahoma City Thunder. I want to be very careful with saying this. I like Jalen Williams. I just don't understand the hype. I don't get it, man. Like he's a good player. Agree. Don't get me wrong, but it seems like a lot of these, like, you know, got like I don't want to like make fun or slight anybody, but like a lot of the analytical people that write these, like the stats guys, the stat nerds, if you will, they love his advanced numbers, and I think that's where it comes from. Which Williams, I think he's a good player, but I think number 3 is more realistic. His teammate Chet Holmgren was number 3 on their list. I think Chet has a very good chance of making an All-Star team, being kind of like that number 2 next to SGA. I could totally see that. Guy we talked about a little bit at the top of the podcast, Alperen Sengun. I think that's a good possibility for him to make an All-Star team. If he has another season like he did last year, who's to say he can't make an All-Star team? I mean, had a really good season. Cade Cunningham was number 5 on their list. To your point, a lot of competition at the guard spot. But the way I'm thinking, maybe they get voter fatigue. Maybe they want to see a fresh face. Maybe they want to see someone new. Maybe they're sick of seeing Trae Young and all those guys every year. Maybe the fans, turn on a Pistons game and Cade's going crazy. Because I remember there was a point where he was averaging like 30 points a game towards the end of the season, and he was just going like berserk. Maybe, Cade comes out like that towards, maybe the middle of the season. Jamal Murray, which I'm still surprised he has not made an All-Star game throughout his career. He's so due to make an All-Star team. Congrats to him for signing a new contract too. I think he's got like 4 years, $200 million.
Oh yeah.
Jamal Murray, number 6. Evan Mobley was number 7. I think he's going to have to block a whole lot of shots. I feel like the front court in the East is, I don't want to say it's weak, but there is some competition there. Desmond Bane was number 8. I don't know. It really depends on how healthy Ja is, because I think Ja makes Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. a hell of a lot better. We saw them without Ja, and they were in roles where they were just not comfortable whatsoever this past season. But they had Desmond Bane 8. Franz Wagner, probably the most hated guy in terms of like U.S. Pistons fans. They don't like Franz Wagner. He just has such a punchable face. I understand why Killian Hayes sucker punched him, man. I really do, man. He just like, you ever like meet someone, you're like, man, you have such a punchable face right now.
I think it was his brother that he punched. I think it was Mo that he hit in the back of the head.
Was it Mo?
Yeah, I think it was Mo. Mo was talking. He like checked him into the side. I remember that play. And it was Mo who got hit in the back of the head. But the punchable face is there. I see it every time I see this guy line up for a shot. I agree with you.
Anytime we play the Wagner brothers, man, like they're just so, they just irritate me, man. Like, cause like they do like all the like dirty shit when the refs aren't looking, and it's just like, dude, like you're just frustrating the hell out of me right now. I don't know what's wrong with my screen. I think it's because there's sunlight. Let's see. Okay,
there we go.
Oh no, it's still messy. Doesn't really matter if you can see me. I really don't care. I'm just invisible right now. I don't know what it is. Oh man, gotta love technology. Okay,
you gotta keep your arm up like that.
Yeah. Oh well, I really don't care. And then to wrap up the list, you got Jonathan Kuminga, number 10. So that was Bleacher Report's top 10, and then it's gonna bug the shit out of me. People listening on the audio side are gonna probably be like, "Dude, what the hell are you talking about? I can see you fine." Okay, there we go.
There it is.
Yeah, it's just my like ring camera. If the sun hits it, it like acts weird. I don't know why, but I don't look like Casper the Ghost anymore.
Yeah, the comments already got a couple names for you ready. I like that.
Ghost Anthony, I love it. I love it.
There it is.
Obi-Wan. Oh, but Yeah, I think there's a chance Cade could make it, but to your point, I think we've seen All-Star is such a you have to win type of award type of thing, which I never understood. I always thought like if your team success, you throw it out the window, you just put the best players out there, kind of like how the NHL does it, where they have one player from each team on their All-Star game. I think the NBA should adapt that. That way you get more of a just a broader horizon of who's the best player in each team.
Yeah, Cade has a good respect from players around the league. Like we've seen him get a lot of respect, a lot of rave from likes of Kevin Durant, Chris Paul. Like a lot of stars have raved about the upside of him. Paul George, DeMar DeRozan. I can keep going and going and going, but yeah, it's good, definitely gonna have to change in terms of how the media sees him. And I mean, fans, you're not really gonna be able to tell. They act like Cade is like a complete afterthought in the NBA. Like, no, Cade is one of them ones, and it's taking some time for people to realize it, and that's the Pistons' fault, not Cade's fault. So, like, yeah, the winning really bothers me. Like that should not be the barometer for how some of these awards are given out, like how All Stars are decided on. Like, I was literally arguing with some of the people from Clutch Points as they're trying to tell me that Drew Holiday is a better basketball player than Cade Cunningham. Like, no, he's not. The team won. He fits well with that team, but I don't really see the world where he's a better player than Cade. Like, Cade cooks him every time he guards him. Like, I just don't see that. So I think that kind of goes into the Jalen Williams argument as well. Even though he is a really good player, I think, again, if you were to take these players and put them on different teams in different situations, they look different. I think Cade's skill set translates on any team he goes to. If you were to take him to let's say the Orlando Magic, they're Eastern Conference contenders, in my opinion. Like, I just think his skill set translates wherever he goes. I don't really see that argument for a lot of other players that people rank and put ahead of him. And again, a lot of that leans on the winning argument, which is like a lot of why the press and the love went to Evan Mobley the way it did over the past few seasons. But I don't know. I think people are starting to open their eyes a little bit more, especially after the Team USA show out that he had last year. But yeah, he's going to have to do a lot more to put his stamp on it. And I think he can as soon as this season.
I do agree with you. I think the lack of winning has kind of put a stain on his name, which I think is unfair because it's not really his fault the way the team was built around him. That's more of a front office failure than a Cade Cunningham failure, in my opinion. But I think once he starts winning more games, I think the respect factor is going to start going up because he's just such a complete player. Can score at all three levels, pass, defend, communicate, leader out there. There's so much winning qualities about him. And I mean, you have to salute, his brother Cannon and his cousin Ashton for just, working with him. Yeah. Shout out to those guys.
Good dudes.
They really are. They did such a good job of just like molding him, getting him ready for the NBA because he's a guy that you want to build around. There's a reason why the Pistons gave him that rookie max extension because they believe in him. They believe that they can build a team around him, and he's a franchise player. So I think there's a chance he could make All-Star. I'm just hoping the media gets voter fatigue and maybe some NBA fans vote for Cade. Just need Zaza Pachulia to say, hey, vote for Cade Cunningham.
Let me ask you a quick question. How good do you think the Pistons need to be in order for him to get to that spot? Because, again, I think they obviously can't be outside like the play-in seedings. They need to be – to me, I think he's got to like hover around like between 8 and 6. I don't think they need to be a top 4 seed in the East. What do you think? How good do you think the Pistons need to be in order for him to get to that spot?
I think if they're a play-in team, like around that 10 seed, and they're winning games – and he's putting up at least 25 a game. And, maybe the assists go up a little bit, which I think they will. Maybe he's around like
I agree.
25, 5, and 8.5. Then, yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at Paolo Banchero last year, him and Cade had identical stat lines. The only difference was Orlando was really damn good last year.
Yep.
If Cade had the same amount of wins, he probably would have been an all-star last year. That's just, it goes back to the winning thing with all-stars. And you know how some media members don't always like watch Detroit. I would say the only media member that's like locked in to Detroit is like Chris Broussard. And like, that's about it. Right. Like a national media guy. But outside of that, I mean, like most people you listen to, and we're gonna talk about some other media guys in the next segment, talking about Jalen Duren, but like most guys aren't really that high on the Detroit Pistons, and that's to be expected. They got to watch other teams, all 30 NBA teams, and it's really hard to like lock into, I guess, a team like every night. But we get to see like how special and how talented they are. But I think around that 10 seed is probably where I'm feeling if he does make an all-star team.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, like I said, it's got to be somewhere in that range. Just again, I don't have any question of what his skill set is going to look like. I definitely think I can see him hovering around 10 assists. Like I really do. I think Cade can establish himself as one of the best passers in basketball. I think that chemistry with him and Jalen Duren is so special. I think it's gotten better as long as they're both healthy and on the floor. At the same time, that's been a big concern up until this point. But we're seeing the best health that's been established around him. Is it perfect at this point? No, but he's shown that he can produce at an all-star level with the worst kind of resources around him. And I think that shows how special he is. And again, one of my clutch and in this sports media, my dying wish to fight that I'm trying to put on right now is to reestablish the criteria for all this voting and stuff. Because I think it's abysmal how they've done it over the past few seasons. Like the Cade Rookie of the Year thing just drove me crazy how people were able to just put things aside. And then when you look at things like this year, Victor Wembanyama's on a horrible team. Did that stop him from winning Rookie of the Year? Absolutely not. So, like, there's a lot of like disingenuous voting and a lot of narratives that kind of just carried like through the season. And I really think that needs to stop. I think Cade does have a shot. It's gonna be tough. But I think the voting needs to kind of be a little bit more in check with what we've seen over the past several seasons.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think national media members don't do the game any favors when they kind of plant flags really early in the season. Like you can listen to like national podcasts and they're already planting flags for like MVP, Rookie of the Year.
Yep.
Like some people already have Reed Shepherd as their Rookie of the Year lock. Like they're already like trying to like draw that narrative. It's just like, well, let's watch them play before we kind of plant those flags. Like I think it's really early to kind of like drive that narrative.
Yes.
But we're gonna stick with media. So I was listening to Zach Lowe, and he basically went through basically all 30 teams. And this was a minute clip I want to put on the screen for people to listen to about him and Kevin Pelton talking about Jalen Duren.
Interesting is like there is this archetype of the rim running, rim protecting center. Can he grow beyond that with his skill as a playmaker, or the skill to create his own offense, and then just will his rim protection match kind of the potential he has at that end?
The bigger question to me is his defense. That's the pivot point for him as a player, because if he doesn't become a good defensive player, I don't think he's ever going to be good enough offensively to really play a role on a great team, even though we all know he can just jump out of the building and catch lobs. And to your point, I've highlighted this in 10 things before. He has more feel on offense than people, I think, who don't watch the Pistons might expect, given his archetype as a player. He can face up. He can work off the bounce. He's a pretty good passer for a 20-year-old center. But as always, the question is going to be like, how much of that is he being able to do on a team that has Cade Cunningham, who I remain pretty high on. We'll see how long Ivey is there, but other guys who are going to kind of control the ball, how much of that are you going to really lean into? So I think defense is the make or break.
So that was kind of the clip of them talking about Jalen Duren and the Pistons. So I kind of wanted to get like your thoughts and your reactions to what they were talking about with Jalen Duren.
There's some truth to what they said. Defense definitely needs to be his focal point at this point of the season and his career as well. I think there's enough offensive firepower around the Pistons right now where they don't have to lean on him to, erupt as a 20-point guy. Like, I just don't think that needs to happen. Defensively needs to be his focus. And we've seen some of that potential early as last season when obviously things kind of got off the rails. But when he was healthy and we didn't deal with the ankle injuries that he had, he looked like he was on his way to be one of those amazing rim protectors. I think he was leading the league in rebounding. His shot blocking was there. He was able to deter shots with his length. He wasn't dealing with the excessive foul trouble that he was developing throughout the season. The potential is there. Like, I don't see a problem with his growth at this point up to right now. Now, I do think it would help to see him shine a little bit more offensively, but again, I don't think they need to be relying on him. Like if a team gets hot and they got to throw to him in the post to cool. Like, I don't think they need to do that. And I think there's enough potential that we've seen already with his passing. I mean, even his jump shot, like, granted, it's not great. It's not consistent right now, but the form doesn't look broke. He's grew exponentially as a free throw shooter. Like, I don't think that's talked about enough. From his first year to what he did in his second year, how he grew his numbers, like, he was fantastic from the free throw line, especially with the contact that he's going to be able to draw in the paint. So, yeah, defense definitely needs to be his focal point. But again, I still do see him as one of those foundation pieces for the Pistons. And yeah, a lot of attention is going to be paid to his defense and see what he can do in the paint with the guys around him.
I talked about it yesterday. I honestly think that we all know offensively he's got a bag. Like, you get him around like 5 feet to the rim, by the rim, he's probably going to score.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a post game. He does have a face-up game. We just don't really see it too much. And there have been like pictures of him practicing some face-up stuff, some three-pointers, which a lot of fans aren't like too happy about. They want him to, focus on defense. I would just say, just because we don't see a video or a picture evidence of working on defense doesn't mean he's not working on it.
Right.
These guys aren't going to, document every part of their life. But I will say, I think defense is something that a lot of fans want to see if he can make the same kind of improvements as he did offensively this year. He has all the physical tools to at least bother shots. We're not asking him to, block 3 shots a game. It'd be nice if he did, but we understand there's a process. He's only 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think, they were pretty spot on with the defense. The one thing I just didn't agree with is they kind of said, how motivated would he be to, keep developing his offense if Cade Cunningham is there? Kind of like drawing a narrative that those two couldn't coexist if they both needed the ball in their hands, which I kind of think is false. I think Cade would defer to Jalen Duren if he had more of an offensive bag personally.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Duren is just scratching the surface as a player. I've never seen a second-year, 20-year-old player get talked about this much, especially as a Pistons draft pick in recent memory. Like, I've seen so many fans just say, give up on him. He's never going to be a good player. Last year was inexcusable. I've never seen that personally, Eric. Like, the kid's 20 years old. He's not even scratching the surface of what he could possibly be. And he already looks like a 10-year vet, just like his physique wise. Like, it's wild to me that some fans just want to give up on the kid already.
Fans are impatient, man. Again, I understand it. I totally get it, just based on the lack of success that has been, provided from this team and this franchise. But no, he's too valuable right now. And again, at 20 years old, and again, it's short glimpses of some of the stuff that they're talking about, like him having an offensive bag. We didn't really see much of that because, like, kind of I've talked about all offseason, he played a lot of, I don't want to say out of position, but he was playing in areas where you aren't able to highlight. Like, I think it was, I don't know if it was Jack Kelly or Kuka Hill, shout out to them, but one of them put up a highlight reel of Duren isolating from the top of the key, from the three-point line, and he was scoring from there. That was cool, but that's not where you really want to be playing him at. Like, if he's going to be playing up there, he's going to be setting picks for Cade or off-ball screens for somebody else to come up for a shot. I didn't like seeing that from him. Even when they were in the summer league, they had him bringing the ball up and he's orchestrating the offense. Like, yeah, that's cool, but I feel like that doesn't need to be his focus right now. I don't think developing an offensive bag is like a priority for him right now. Granted, we want to see it. Sure, we want to see some growth. It will be nice, but I don't think that's a priority. The defense has got to be a priority. Doing it without fouling is a priority. And like, I think that's going to serve enough based on what they have. And I think simply based on how him and Cade play together offensively, again, I think Cade is one of the best passers in basketball, and his ability to not just hit Duren in space, but he throws him open in areas, and he's tall enough and long enough that he can go get the ball and put it down on a lob or a wide open dunk, and that's going to serve well for them. But defensively, I think he's going to have to make that growth. And again, even outside of the paint, he's shown the ability to guard in space on the perimeter, and that's rare for someone as big and as athletic and as young as he is as well. So the potential is there. I don't get the whole narrative of giving up on him already. Like, I think that's stupid. I think he's done enough to where we can say, okay, in a few years, we should see something special with him. Now, granted, what that looks like, we don't know yet, but I think the tools have already been flashing. Like, I've had the ability to see him work out before games. He puts a lot of time into working on the things that he needs to get better at, but he also has talked about the things that he knows are his focus, like defense and just being able to make the team better and putting them in the right spots in order to be as productive as possible on both sides of the ball. Like, I just think the tools are there. The flashes have been there. I don't see an argument in giving up on him already. That's just crazy.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna find a center like Duren in free agency. That's my thing. And I also want to give Vincent Goodwill and James Edward credit. Yeah, they have a paid podcast called The Detroit Players. And this summer, Vinny Goodwill said that he caught up with JD at Team USA Select. And he asked him about, like, effort, like, what was going on. And he was just like, I just wasn't trying last season. Like, he took full accountability that last season was just a really bad season. And it was an effort thing. He said, it wasn't my ankles. It wasn't my health. It was just me. But to your point, I think the Chicago game is one game that I watched recently where he was active. He was blocking shots. He was just a lob threat. Nikola Vucevic had no answer for him whatsoever. And I get it. Nikola Vucevic is like 50 right now. But the thing is, we've seen games where he can take over. He can, affect the game on both ends of the floor. The potential is there, man. It's just finding the right coach to untap it. Yes. And I think JB Bickerstaff and his staff, he brought in the assistant coach from Memphis that worked with Steven Adams. I can't remember his name. And Jaren Jackson Jr. Two good examples of what possibly Jalen Duren could become. I'm really excited to see what this new coaching staff can do, because it sounds like JB Bickerstaff is going to have a clear-cut plan for each individual player. You're not going to see him bringing up the ball up the court. Right. To your point, I think last year it was such a mess from the third game of the season to the 82nd game of the season, where a lot of players were just playing out of position, and they were just kind of saying, like, well, shit, if no one else is going to do anything, I might as well just, like, score. Because, like, there was no structure. There was no offense set up. It was a bunch of just, like, sloppy DHO, bad passes, maybe a pick and roll every, 3 or 4 plays. Like, I think structurally, JB Bickerstaff is going to bring more of a continuity to this team and get these guys in better position. Like, he talked about not having Jalen Duren being on the perimeter defending. He's just like, that's what the guards are for. Like, we want to have these guys in the paint to bother shots. Like, and I think that's something that he could possibly block more shots if he's not on the perimeter trying to chase, forwards or guards trying to block shots.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of what Monty was doing just was so blasphemous. It just didn't make any kind of sense. It felt like they were just literally just trying to throw stuff at the wall to see what stuck. And I didn't like that at all. Again, Duren has unbelievable upside. I think that was one of the best moves that Troy Weaver did while he was here. Like, that was a bombshell when he got acquired. And it makes sense. Again, when you have a guy like Cade, even Cade and Ivy, who's a good passer too, Asar can handle the ball and pass well too. I think those guys are going to do a great job of complimenting him. And if the reports are true about the newfound company that Jalen Duren has, some WNBA associates of his, maybe that's some new motivation for him. I don't know. I wouldn't give up on the kid yet. I think he has a lot of promise. And I really think JB Bickerstaff's going to do a good job of unlocking that.
Maybe she could teach him to play some defense. I don't know, man.
She'll help him out. I think so. She's going to do great wonders to everybody.
I'm joking, JD, if you're watching this. I'm joking, man. Congrats, though. Happy for you, brother.
Yes, sir.
I do want to move on to the next topic. And this is actually kind of a fun topic. And I've thought about it. This question, I'm not going to involve Bobby Klittman or Ron Holland. Okay. If you had to build around 3 players out of the core 4 Who would you build around and why?
Okay. Cade is an automatic. Cade is obviously going to be in that grouping. I would go Duren. Again, I just think him and Cade's connection, it's very special. I think it's going to make a lot of good sense moving forward. Three, I'd go Ivy. I would go Cade and Ivy as my 3. I think those are the 3 I'm most high on right now. I know it's a lot of buzz for Asar. To me, the thing is about Asar, yes, he's very good at what he does. His defense, his defensive upside is there. Like, I have no question about that. It makes the most sense, especially considering the lack of perimeter defense that they've had over the past few seasons. I think he's fantastic in that regard, even though he does need to work on some things with that. Him and Duren both had the same problem of defending with fouling or without fouling. I just think the problem with Asar is his negatives need so much work that it kind of worries me in terms of where he's even going to be used. Like, I don't even know if he's going to start at this point of the season. That doesn't mean he's not going to have a role. He's not going to be valuable. He does have good upside. Again, I like what we saw from him before he was even drafted. He's a good player. I like his upside, but I think like a big bugaboo that people talk about with Cade and Ivy is his jump shot. Sure, but we have seen that look good. Like, there are games where I can still peel back. The Kings game on the road, I think against the Clippers, he showed out. Against the Pacers on the road, where he finally got into the starting lineup. Like, he was showing out and showing that he can be valuable and that jump shot's not broken. It looks better and better since he came out of the draft. And honestly, for me, man, while yes, we do want to see that jump shot be a little bit more consistent. We don't want to see him have that Jalen Green, like, sporadic kind of efficiency. I think what he's so good at, though, with his speed, his ability to draw contact, I think he draws contact better than any other Piston on the roster and getting to the free throw line. If he's excelling with that and playing off ball, which he's accustomed and used to doing anyway, and maybe getting some minutes staggered as a backup point to kind of help out with the second lineup or the second unit, I think that serves them better than just Asar being really good on defense and hoping he can do something offensively. Because right now, the jump shot's not there. The handle was really unimpressive, especially given the hype that he got coming in from the draft. The mid-range game wasn't there. It seemed like, granted, again, that's another Monty Williams issue. He was sticking him in the corner for so long. It seemed like when he did get the ball, he didn't really know what to do with it, it seemed like. So, like, for me, I feel like Cade and Ivy is confident and polished enough and has so much special upside with his speed and his ability to get to the rim and his athleticism. I don't want to give up on that yet. I think him and Cade fit well together. I think, again, Cade has shown the ability to play off ball. Ivy's shown the ability to play on ball and do whatever is needed for the team to mesh and, put together some production. And then obviously Duren, we just talked about him on the last segment. I just think those 3 right now are so polished with what they're good at. It makes the most sense to keep those guys around. Like, you can just put shooters around those 3, and I think it could work. If we see them at their prime as they keep growing and ascending, I think it'll be easier to put pieces around those 3 than it would be to bring in someone like Asar or Stu or whoever else people think is in that core. I just think those 3 make the most sense right now based on how they play with each other.
Yeah, I think this is a hard question because you have one side of the coin. It's like, I like Cade and Ivy. I think he has potential.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he was misused last season, and he's probably had the toughest road out of any player out of the core 4 of being a 2 guard next to Cade his rookie year to going to, okay, now I'm the point guard. Okay, now I'm going to be playing behind Killian Hayes and kind of going back into maybe starting next to Cade, maybe not. We'll have to wait and see. I think my 3 are Cade, Duren, and Asar. Not to say I don't think Cade and Ivy isn't talented. I'm a little bit higher on Asar than Cade and Ivy. It's not to say that I don't think Cade and Ivy's an incredible talent. I think he's really good. I just think a big reason why we saw Trajan Langdon acquire so many shooting guards, I think the writing's a little bit on the wall of they want to see what happens when you put veterans around Ivy, see how he reacts. I think this is more of a test to see how Cade and Ivy reacts bringing in a Malik Beasley who's already an elite 3-point shooter, bringing in a Tim Hardaway Jr. that can start, or he can be a 6-man. The reason why I'm higher on Asar is I already think the defense is elite. I already think he's one of the best defenders. I think he's the best defender on the team. And I want to put this on the screen because someone had commented something, and I think there's a lot of talk about it. And it comes from Gabe Knotts. He says, hot take, but Asar with handles is better than Asar with the jumper. Remember what happened to Giannis? Finally developed his handle and gets to the rim automatically. I'm not comparing the two, but I think Asar with the handle, Asar has an explosive first step, his ability to finish with either his right or left hand. I honestly think if he doesn't develop a jump shot, but he develops more of a tighter handle, obviously there was a lot of, to your point in the OTE, Asar was playing a lot of backup guard and Amen was the lead guard. I think if Asar developed a handle, to Game Knotts' point, he doesn't really need to, be a 40% 3-point shooter. But if he does develop a jump shot and he, develops a handle, which I don't think both will happen. It's either one or the other most times with these players. But I think most people would probably look at Asar, look at the physical tools he has, look at the potential, and say, if he develops, either a handle or a jump shot, you have a two-way player that could score. Not to say Ivy can't score. It's just I have a lot of questions about Ivy. It's consistency. Is he going to have kind of like PTSD with another brand new coach? Like, I don't know how much of Monty Williams got in his head, because I've never seen, like, rookie Cade and Ivy was very positive. Would talk to everybody. Very short this season with media. He was very, I don't want to say he was depressed, but he wasn't as upbeat as he was. And I don't know if that was because of the losing streak. I don't know if that was because, he wasn't playing. Killian Hayes is playing in front of him. I have a lot of questions about Cade and Ivy, and I think it's not so much of his game. It's more on the mental side.
I feel you on that. I had the pleasure of being able to talk to his father. Shout out to Javen Hunter. We had him over on Sports Rat Radio when it was still going. He spoke to a lot of that because we talked a lot about it. I mean, it was hard to ignore how the season started with where they put Ivy, where they started Killian Hayes, and they were putting him on and off the bench, and just a lot of things that didn't really make sense. And I talked to his pops about that. I'm like, yo, I respect and really appreciated. Yes, I agree with you. There was some short, like statements and kind of sentiments from him emotion wise. And I don't blame him. 28-game losing streak, bro. I'd be in the dumps too. I totally understand. But his ability to, again, we talk about this with young players all the time, is not just how they grow physically and athletically with their game on the court, but mature wise, or like how are they going to be able to respond when things don't go smooth for them, when they're not, obviously when you come in the draft, he had the list and everything of how he wants to be an all-star and MVP, and he had all these expectations. And I never saw anything from him. Like, granted, if he would have, sat on the bench and pounded his fist or had a back and forth with Monty, or was, doing, subliminal tweeting on social media or something like that, that would worry me a little bit. It would have been understood why, but I respect his ability to kind of rise above it and say, hey, whatever I need to do, I'm going to go out there and make it happen. Even when he did get the word that he was coming out the bench, say, hey, I'm going to still be J.I. I told his pops that I really was impressed, and I respected that a lot about him. And I feel like that hopefully will be able to carry over with J.B. Bickerstaff. Hopefully, again, we don't know what we're going to see with him. We don't know what his plan is as of right now, but we do know he has a plan, and he at least wants to see how they're going to be able to mesh together. I think, again, I like the guards they brought in. I like Tim Hardaway Jr. Malik Beasley was somebody I shouted out as an acquisition that would make sense. But I do think Ivy does bring that dynamic that Cade doesn't have with speed. And again, as long as he's not getting calls from the ref, I think Ivy does get that whistle just because his speed and his athleticism and his electric motor at the rim makes the most sense. So I don't know. I think it's there, and hopefully we can see a little bit more of that growth coming next season.
Yeah, for sure. I think you could make a case for both Asar and Ivy. I think they're both talented. Yeah. I think Ivy, to your point, brings the dynamic and transition, open court, just his agility, his speed, getting to the rim. I think the only thing I would like to see him get better at is finishing around the rim a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because there's times where he's out of control, and that's to be expected. He's a young player. And being that fast, he's probably faster than like 90% of the people that are in front of him. So, you know, when you're that wide open, maybe you miss around the rim every now and then. But I think the one thing with him is consistency with that jump shot. And last year, I thought we saw growth defensively. I thought, he was trying on defense. He got a lot better defensively. Now, obviously, it was a 14-win season, 28-game losing streak. People aren't really concerned about if Cade and Ivy's defense got better. They want to win games. Like, I get it.
Right.
But I think he had progressions last year of, being able to switch defensively. He had months where he was shooting, close to 40% from three, but then he also had months where he was shooting sub 20 from three, which he's a young player. That's to be expected. But I also think the reason why Trajan brought in shooters like Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. is those are two veteran guys that have skill sets that Cade and Ivy wants to have. He wants to be able to shoot 8 threes a game at a probably 40% clip like Malik Beasley can. He wants to be like a microwave, like a Tim Hardaway Jr. I think those are two vets for him that he could learn from, and they're not really going to be here long term. They're 1-year deals, but hey, who knows? They might want to come back, but I think those are two vets that he can learn from, and I think there's a big reason why Trajan Langdon decided to target those two, because those are two players that I think he should just be soaking up the knowledge each and every day of, getting better with his 3-point shot.
For sure. Yeah. And I see it with Asar too. I mean, obviously he sees, bringing Fontecchio back, going to get a Tobias Harris, like those guys, they're going to do wonders for both of those two young players. They got a lot of growth to embrace. I see it coming for both of them. I don't know. I just feel like Asar, I feel like his room of growth, while again, he's very good defensively, I just feel like his room of growth is just a lot higher at this current moment. So as it stands right now, just knowing that Ivy has shown the ability to pass, you just spoke to his growth on defense. I would like to see him get a little bit better from the free throw line. Like if you're going to get there, close to 10 times a game, hopefully you got to be shooting around 80%. Like I didn't like him shooting low 70s. I thought that was really underperforming for him. And I do think that'll get better with the help of a Fred Vincent. So, I don't know. I really like what Ivy brings, and I just really like that potential dynamic between him and Cade.
Yeah, same here. It's I just know this season a lot of the narratives are already getting kind of put out with contract years with JD and Cade and Ivy, and I just have a feeling it's going to be very toxic, and I don't want it to be toxic.
Yep.
I hope both of these guys come out and just shine, and we're faced with a big problem, because I don't want to see these guys have another down season, and the fan base is shitting on them, because you know how fans are. It's just it gets so toxic. But I did want to stick with Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, and the question I wanted to ask you is, who do you think is likely to have a breakout season, Jaden Ivey or Jalen Duren?
Ooh. That's a good question. That is a very good question. I think the opportunity is higher for Jalen Duren, just because I think, again, we talked about it this whole time. I think Cade is going to give him those looks to be able to finish at the rim, to grow and show how dominant he can be in the paint. Something about Jaden Ivey feels like I just think he's slept on right now. I really think I do think he saw those guys being brought in. And I don't want to say it's like a writing on the wall type deal, but I do think he understands, like I said, the contract situation. This team hasn't been good. And I think you're one of the biggest X factors for where this team goes trajectory-wise. And again, with Fred Vincent here, he's going to be spending a lot of time with him. I've already heard that they've been working together and trying to get, a little bit more continuity and rhythm with his shot. Even with like a little clip I think he did of a camp, I think, again, his jump shot looks a lot more polished than we've seen over the past couple of seasons. So I feel like that breakout year is more likely for Ivy, just because I don't think it'll be as confusing as it was last season for him. I think he's going to start. I think he's going to see those reps as kind of the backup to, like, I don't see Marcus Sasser just being the backup point to kind of table set the second unit. I don't see that happening. I think they're going to use Ivey for a lot of that. And I think he's going to be able to take advantage of a lot of those matchups playing against bench rotational guys. I think he's going to be able to blow past them. I think he's going to be able to show off some of that athleticism that we didn't really get to see a whole lot of last season. I don't remember a whole lot of dunks from him, unfortunately. And that was one of the things that he was best at coming in from the draft. So I don't know. I don't think his jump shot is going to be the necessarily like the predicate to decide whether or not he is growing or getting to that place. I don't think that's an immediate need, even though it would be helpful for sure. I don't think he needs to be Devin Booker sniping from three in order to get to where we think he's going to be next season. I think he's going to be able to grow in other areas. I think you are going to see an uptick in his scoring based on other ways of how he can get the ball. And I don't know. I see that growth from him more so than Duren. And again, it's not that Duren can't get there. I do believe that's going to happen, but I think Duren's impact is going to be defensively. I don't know how much growth we're going to see offensively from him this season. We'll see what happens, but I think it's leaning towards Ivey as of right now.
Yeah, I think both of these players are very polarizing with the fan base. Both have different stands. I feel like Cade and Ivy fans are they come for your head way more than JD fans.
Yes.
I had some Cade and Ivy fans come at me when I was doing podcast with Czar last week. I was just like, yo, man. Yeah, shout out Czar, man. Good dude. I said something I didn't agree with, which, hey, I get it. I piss people off every week. I guess it's just kind of the title. Like, I'm not always going to say stuff that you like, but I think to your point, Ivy is probably more likely to have a breakout season, and I'll explain why I think that as well. I think with Dwayne Casey and Monty Williams, his role changed completely.
Yep.
I think with JB Bickerstaff, I think bringing in a guy that's very level-headed, says he wants to make it fun. I think Jaden Ivey, for the first time in his career, and a lot of players that got drafted by Trey Weaver, they're going to have defined roles. They're not going to have to be playing out of position. They're not going to have to just create something on the fly. Jaden Ivey is probably going to have a defined role, and who better not to teach him than a guy that just worked with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell.
Right.
And those are two all-star guards that, made the playoffs, and that's where they want to go. I mean, I remember Donovan Mitchell talking to Jaden Ivey after a game. I don't know what he said to him, but Jaden Ivey was getting talked to by Russell Westbrook, Donovan Mitchell. Like, people saw how he was getting misused by Monty Williams. They just told him, keep your head up, kid. Like, you're there. You're getting there. I think Jaden Ivey is due for a breakout season because I think he's going to be put in positions where he's okay with it. He's okay with, maybe he's not, starting all, 48 minutes with Cade Cunningham or however many minutes he does play. Maybe he does play a little bit of backup point guards. We've seen him, have the ball in his hands and he flourishes. We've seen him playing off ball with Cade Cunningham and it looks nice. It looks good. Yeah. I've never watched Cade, Jaden Ivey, and I was like, oh man, don't play those guys ever together again. Like it doesn't work. I've never had that opinion watching those two together. My only opinion is we really haven't seen them play together that much yet to have a clear, concise opinion saying, okay, we have to move on from Cade. We have to move on from Ivey. Ivey's better than Cade. Like we haven't seen those guys play enough games to have those opinions yet. That's why I think Jaden Ivey's going to have a breakout season more likely than Jalen Duren. Not to say JD can't have a breakout season. I think JD has more expectations on him than Jaden Ivey just because of the defense last year. Fans are going to be on his ass if he's not at least protecting the rim or trying to block shots. You know how Pistons fans are. Like if he's not showing effort on the defensive end, I think he actually has more pressure on him than Jaden Ivey does this upcoming season.
I totally agree with that last point. I think your other point going to Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, I think this is why it was so mind-blowing that he got let go and then to hear that him and Donovan Mitchell had conflict. I feel like his ability to make those two guys work, and again, they're undersized guards, not the best defenders. They both can heat up, but to an extent, they're kind of similar to each other. And I don't feel that way about Cade and Jaden Ivey. they're so different in terms of what their skill sets are. It'll be easier to have defined roles for them. I think it'll be easier to put them in position to score and be as productive as they can be if you were able to do that with two guys that were super similar to each other. And again, I just think it makes a little bit more sense based on how much he'll have the ball, how much how the I guess the resources around him will be able to fit with him a little bit better compared to like what Duren is going to do. I feel like while Duren is a great player and I do like him as a focal point moving forward, his expectation, like we keep saying, it's on defense. I don't think they're going to be throwing the ball to him on the block consistently saying, hey, help us out here. Like, I just don't think that's going to be a part of their game plan. It may help in some areas, but I just don't think that's going to happen consistently. Ivey's going to have a lot of looks to be that established number 2 scorer. Because as of right now, the Pistons don't have that. And I feel like if Tobias Harris is that guy, that's going to be a little bit of a worry. Unless if it's a big drop off between Tobias and Jaden in terms of their scoring averages, I think that's going to be a bit of a worry. So the Pistons kind of need to see Ivey step in and kind of solidify himself as one of those primary scorers that can take some pressure off Cade Cunningham, because I don't know how much longer we can see Cade get tripled and double teamed the way he has been throughout his career. Like, I don't think Duren is going to help that a ton. I think Ivey has to be that guy to kind of take some of that pressure off. And if JB has the plan and the IQ that we think he has, I think it's going to be able to work.
Yeah, same here. I think so too. You could try to replace Ivey, but here's the thing: you're not going to be able to replace his speed and just his dynamic play. Mm-hmm. Like, you could go out and get a movement 2 guard, but you're not going to find a guy that has a quick first step like Cade and Ivy, his ability to get to the rim and all that stuff. Like, those guys do not grow on trees. But I do think Cade and Ivy is going to have a better season. I just hope he doesn't have like coaching PTSD where there's another new coach critiquing him. And it's just like, we talked about it earlier. Like, we know, physically he can play, but, I think the mental part of the game is actually more crucial than what these players can do on the court. Cause we really don't know how much damage Monty Williams did to that kid's confidence. We really don't know. To your point, we didn't really see too many, cryptic tweets or F Monty or anything like that. We saw that from the fans, though. I mean, like the fans did their fair share. They're still doing it to this day. But I mean, I really hope that he has the mental strength to just bounce back. Mm-hmm. All these players, just not Cade and Ivy, like every young player on this team, because I think there was just so much damage from a development and a timeline situation last year. I felt like you wasted a whole year last year of development with Cade and Ivy. Like, it should have been Cade and Ivy starting next to Cade Cunningham game 1.
Yes.
We would have so much more answers, Eric, of can these two play together? Yes. Now we're still having those questions. Can these two play together? But we had Killian Hayes for 41 games last season when it should have been Cade and Ivy for all 82, in my opinion.
Could agree more. Another good note that Javen Hunter, again, Ivy's dad, just kind of spoke to, him and Cade, they want to make this work. Again, they've shown the ability to sacrifice. Neither of them come off as chuckers. Oh, I got to get mine. I got to be the man. I got to be able to do this. They both sacrifice. They both are passers. They're willing passers. They're willing to play off ball. Again, I want to see them use Cade off ball even more to put on the block and take advantage of his size and strength. And if you have Ivy at the top of the key to kind of make that happen, I think that works. I mean, granted, we didn't even get to see Duren and Ivy in pick and roll situations too much often. Like, there's a lot of Cade and Duren, but Ivy's lightning quick. He's one of the fastest guys in the league. And I just think that has to be something that they look into. And you're right. It really does make me mad that we don't have an answer yet at this point in terms of if they fit. It's not because of them. It's because of how Monty didn't even give us a chance to take a look. Even when Killian wasn't starting, they put Alec Burks in the lineup. Like, it's none of that made sense. And I feel like, granted, yes, could it be a world that exists where maybe a stationary shooter next to Cade Cunningham is his best fit? Sure, that's possible. But looking at the landscape of the league, you just said it. It's not a lot of 2 guards that you could even kind of make those kind of moves for. It's not a lot of dominant, like, 2 guards that would fit next to a guy like Cade. And I feel like with Ivy's skill set, again, his willingness to adapt and show his maturity within the lineup, within his coaching, within his discipline as a player, I feel like it makes the most sense to, I'm not giving him the keys, but put that expectation on him to say, hey, we want to see what you can do. Let's put the ball in his hand. Let's put him in a position where he can show that he can be one of those primary scorers for this team, because I feel like that needs to happen. Duren's expectation is being the best defender in the paint for the Pistons. Ivey has to become that guy that takes that pressure of scoring off of Cade Cunningham more than anybody else on the roster, in my opinion.
Yeah, if I'm Jalen Duren, I'm not letting Asar Thompson block more shots than me in a year.
No way.
I made a graphic, and a lot of people thought I was shitting on Duren. I wasn't shitting on Duren. I'm like, Asar Thompson blocked more shots than Duren, and people say it was taken out of context. There's no context to take. He blocked more effing shots.
Yes.
As a rookie, as a 6'6" rookie, you have 3 inches on the guy. Pause. Literally, like, Duren should be at least blocking close to 100 shots a year, in my opinion. I think he's that type of a center. But to your point, like, you're not going to be able to really replace Ivey. I honestly think he is going to have a breakout year. I think a lot of the questions that fans have are, consistency with the 3-point shot, being the defender that we saw glimpses of last year, being more of that two-way shooting guard next to Cade Cunningham, and just letting them play, seeing if it can work, because I don't even think they've played 100 games together yet.
They haven't. They have not. They have not started enough next to each other. Repetitions have not been there. And again, even when they are on the floor together, it just seemed like Monty was sticking them in the corner and letting Cade and Duren just play pick and roll ball, hopefully where Cade can find a mid-range jumper. We've got 2-3 guys in his face. Like, that can't be the play. That can't be the move. We've seen JB Bickerstaff show the ability to use his players off ball, like Mitchell, like Garland. I think we're going to see a lot more of that with Jaden Ivey, whose speed and athleticism is up and through the charts. I think we're going to see a lot better production and structure with those guys offensively compared to last season. Yeah,
I agree. There was a question I actually wanted to put on the screen real quick. It had to do with Bobby Klippman. Someone wanted to know if we could see Bobby Klippman getting time at the 4 this season.
I don't think it's a stretch. I really don't. I feel like Trajan giving him that deal just before Summer League, they saw something in him. It wasn't just through the pick. And again, he didn't have a whole lot of time to get super familiar with the guys that he was looking at when he took the position as president of basketball operations. It might be sparing minutes, but I don't think it's impossible. Again, the beef stew thing is, I don't really know where they're going with that at this point. I like him as a player, but I don't know if I love him with the Pistons as a player for right now. So I don't think it's impossible. If that jump shot is still there for Klippman, if he's able to be a passer and a facilitator, drop off little easy looks to Paul Reed, or dropping off to shooters in the corner, like, I think that's possible. I don't think it's a stretch to see a young team like him playing a guy as talented as he is. I don't think it's a stretch.
I think the one question with him I have is, like, we know you can shoot from 3, but, like, I want to see if you can shoot the same volume, like, inside the arc. Because if you kind of look at the Summer League, like, he shot like under 40%. And it's just like he has to add a little bit of weight in the weight room, I think, which I think he can. But I honestly think he starts the season with the Crews just to get reps there and get some time there, because I'm not really sure if JB Bickerstaff is going to rely on him right away when you have guys like possibly Isaiah Stewart and Paul Reed on the roster right now. I really don't know, but you never know. It's a long season. Injuries can happen. Maybe you do see Bobby Klippman out there playing some backup power forward for the Pistons. But, I mean, his Summer League, he looked really good. The passing, I think, is something that a lot of people were like, oh, like, this guy can pass and shoot threes. He reminds me so much of Tobias Harris in a sense, where it's like he doesn't necessarily have, like, an elite skill, but he does things really, really well at, like, every level. Like, he's just such a sound basketball player, and I think that has to do with how he was coached and, the people around him.
You need connectors on your roster. You can't just have guys that want to go out there and chuck up 100 shots. He showed the ability to be a connector. Again, he was able to rotate well. He was able to bring the ball up with a smooth handle. Even when he would like rotate along the free throw line and then just drop off, looks to cutters like Ron Holland, or even get dunks to the big man. Like he was able to connect pieces to get open shots. And you need some of those pieces. You can't just have a bunch of guys who think, all right, I'm the man, I can go get mine, or I can go create mine. Sometimes you create for other people, and it's little things that can make that happen. And I feel like he did a really good job at showing those off in the summer league. Yeah, I definitely agree. He'll probably spend some time with the Crews, but I mean, from what we've seen over the past few seasons, a lot of Crews players got some minutes with the Pistons, so it's not impossible. I think it's very, very likely that he will see some time with the main roster.
I mean, the Crews have been busy, man. I don't even recognize that roster at all. I mean, all the trades they made. I know Ben Carloni got promoted. I mean, like it's just it's so wild to see like all the guys from last year like completely gone. Like Stanley Amude, who was like a mainstay on that team, is going to be with the Bucks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I looked at the roster. I'm like, I don't know who any of these guys are. Like, holy crap.
Jared Roden's with the Raptors now. I don't know where Buddy is. I think Max Unger just got promoted. Shout out to him as the GM. Yeah, it's a lot of movement that just happened with that team. But they've done a good job in keeping them, growing and established. I mean, even with Jonte Porter, he was one of the players on the roster. We know what happened with him, but they've put together some pretty good players on that team. So I like what they can do. I like what they've been doing in that direction.
Yeah, same here. I think Buddy Boeheim is actually in OKC. That's where he got traded to. Him and Xavier Simpson. I think Xavier Simpson is going to the Swarm, and then Buddy is going to OKC. Really funny, actually. Completely random. So I used to do some stuff with the Crews, and I got a DM from the former Crews coach, DJ Baker.
Love DJ. Shout out DJ Baker.
Shout out DJ. And he's like, hey, if the Swarm play the Crews, come to a game. I want to meet you. I was like, bro, that's so random. I was just like, yo, for sure. Definitely come out to a Crews game. Saw that they're going to be playing the Swarm a couple times this year. So definitely pop out to a Crews game. And they're really cheap too, and they're fun.
Oh my God. Crews games are a ball. Everybody in the chat, if you have not been to Wayne State to check out the Motor City Crews, you absolutely need to. I love DJ. He was always fun to talk to. I got to interview him in post-game sessions after the Crews. And the one time he put me on the spot about a young media career, they lost. They got wiped out by somebody by like 20 points. And normally he's super chill when he's coming into the locker room ready to talk and whatnot. He busted right away after this loss. All right, let's get this going. Come on, hurry up. Like, okay, all right. I just had to rattle him off pretty quick. But he's very emotional. He's a very charged up guy. And he wants the best for his players. He's very, very, very insightful in terms of how he sees the game. And I'm definitely going to try to get out there too to meet him, to see him again. He's a good dude.
Yeah, same here. Got one more question. We can wrap it up because I know you're a little sick. My voice is getting a little raspy like myself over here.
I'm hanging in there.
So this comes from Wes Weaver Jr. He's obviously we talked about kind of like the 3 trade targets, and he had a question about that. It's a question: if Brandon and Cat are trade targets, why not go for Trey instead? He can shoot and create, and him in the pick and rolls with JD would be a nightmare as long as we're not trading Cade.
Trae Young?
Yeah.
Bruh, come on now. We're not kidding. That's not happening. You're going to have to give up. Put Cade in the discussion at least if you go to get a Trae Young. Trey's not one of my favorite players, but he is still very underrated. He's a great passer. We'll see what he does now without DeJounte next to him. He's kind of soloed out in Atlanta. They're in this weird spot too, honestly. I can see them blowing a lot of pieces up very soon. But nah, man. Trey, you don't want to give up a guy like Cade or even Ivy. They're like big guards. They're physical. They're a little bit more multidimensional. Granted, I do like where Trey is now. But to me, I see an upside where Cade is better than him in 5 years. Like, I just not for Trae Young. Not for Trae Young. There's a lot of names that you can, tinker around with. Trae Young, I don't think is one of them as a trade piece.
Yeah, I think when you talk about like big fish, big trade targets, I was listening to a podcast. I think it was with Brian Windhorst and Tim McMahon. He was like saying like, yeah, Trae Young has like a negative trade value, which I don't think. The reason why we haven't seen like a lot of like big names, like outside of like DeMar DeRozan, this free agency, I think a lot of teams right now are very afraid of getting into these apron taxes. I don't really think players like Brandon Ingram, Lauri Markkanen, or Trae Young have negative trade values. I think what you're seeing from teams is they're being very careful of how they spend their money because they don't want to get into that apron tax. In terms of Wes's question, why not go for Trae Young? Well, to Eric's point, yeah, I think you would have to give up Cade for Trae Young just to have those conversations. And I mean, there was some rumblings that Atlanta called the Pistons about Cade Cunningham this past season.
I heard about that.
They were sniffing around, and Trae Young's name popped up as well. And those conversations never really went anywhere. But I've told people before, I think Trae Young does get traded. I don't know where he would get traded to, but I think where Atlanta is at, you drafted a role player with your first overall pick when, you probably should have traded it. I like Zachary Richer, but I don't think he's going to change their franchise whatsoever. No. I think he'll be a fine NBA player. I just don't really see him as one of those players where he really changes the franchise and helps them, get into an Eastern Conference Finals. I don't really think Trae Young is the type of player that the Pistons need right now. I think the type of player that they need, in my opinion, like position-wise, is be really nice if they had a two guard that could defend, both offensively and defensively. Same with a small forward. I think those are the type of players that they would possibly be looking at. I don't really think they're looking at point guard because you kind of have Cade Cunningham playing your point guard. And I think most people would probably like a 6'6" point guard versus a 6'1" point guard that kind of just cherry picks on offense.
Right.
Like, if we're being honest, like I think a team that should trade for Trae Young is Orlando, personally. I think they have the defenders. I think they have the pieces. Like, you have a backcourt of KCP and Trae Young, and you have Paulo and Jonathan Isaac and all those. Like, that would be that would be an Eastern Conference, just in my opinion, contender. Like, if they were able to get Trae Young, but who knows what Atlanta's going to do? I really don't know. I thought Trae Young was going to get traded versus DeJounte Murray. Boy, was I wrong. But I don't know, Wes. I know you ask about Trae every week. I don't think he's going to be in a Pistons uniform, but I do think he is going to get traded to the Eastern Conference, another Eastern Conference team. I don't see the Pistons being in the run for Trae Young.
Yeah, I saw him mention Ivey even being the trade. Is he then the best compliment to Cade in that regard? Like, again, we still don't know what Ivey looks like in a perfect, full season scenario, but Trae Young is not the complimentary guard you want next to Cade Cunningham. He's a foul baiter. Like, I don't know. That doesn't make much sense. He's a good player, but he's a player. Again, we were talking about guys whose skill sets can translate anywhere. I don't feel like his skill set translates to any team. He has to be in the perfect situation where it complements the guys around him or where he can shine. And when you have Cade Cunningham, I just don't see that making much sense.
You need elite two-way defenders around him to make it work. That's why I mentioned Orlando, because Orlando's a very long team. They have versatile defenders in the Wagners, Isaac, Wendell Carter Jr., Suggs. I honestly think that there's definitely, room for him to possibly go there. Someone had asked a question. I know I said one more, but I always do this. They wanted to know about like backup point guard, kind of like your stance on it, like where you're at with it. Would you be okay with Marcus Sasser or possibly Cade and Ivy like getting those reps this season?
I'm not super high on Sasser right now, and I know that kind of blows up the clip that you just had with the Pistons team. But I don't know. I would be okay if they brought one in, but Sasser has to go if that's going to be the case. And I don't know if they're going to do that right away right now. I think they're going to give him a little bit of time before they just make kind of these brash decisions and brash trades. Like, I think they're still going to take probably up until the All-Star game before we maybe see some dominoes fall off the roster. I don't know. I would be a little bit more okay with kind of just seeing them stagger the lineups with Cade and Ivy kind of playing with that second unit, more so than going out and finding a Monty Morris type player, which you just tried to do last season, and then you traded him 2 weeks after he started playing. Nah, I don't know. I ride out with it for now. Again, I don't think a backup point guard is going to be like the defining role that's going to tip the scale of where this team goes. So you have the ability to kind of see what Sasser does when you have two guards next to him that makes sense. When you have a Sar who can handle the ball, when you have other guys who can handle the ball. I don't see it as a pressing need the way other people have talked about it, but I don't know. I guess I just see it a little different.
I mean, you still have cap space. I mean, if you want to go after available players, why not go after Markelle Fultz? I mean, why not?
Sure.
Good defender. You brought in Fred Vincent, give him another project, see if he can really develop a jump shot. Like, I don't know, man. Like, there's not like a whole lot of available backup point guards out there. I mean, if you want to like try to get Dennis Smith Jr. back or a Markelle Fultz, or maybe they wait to see who gets cut from these training camp rosters. Maybe a veteran point guard, backup point guard gets cut, or maybe they want to kind of see, where this team is at in terms of a backup point guard, because I think that's the one position where Trajan really didn't address. And I think that's for a reason. I think he's trying to see what this team needs. And I think most people in the chat and, watching this live have always mentioned backup point guard and a 7-foot backup center, a rim protection center. Right. I like Paul Reed, but I still think there's room for maybe a fourth center, if you will, just like I've kind of like a Taj Gibson like last year, this kind of like a mentor or someone you could plug and play. But I mean, I think those are the two positions that I have most questions about. But to your point, I don't know. I don't know if you want to put Sasser as a backup point guard when I think he's more of just a kind of like a bucket getter, just like a two guard you could bring off the bench and get a bucket. But we've been on for about an hour and a half. I always do appreciate your time. I do want to give you the floor to, promote yourself, plug yourself, where people can follow you, where people can read your articles over at Clutch Points.
Man, I appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much. It's always fun being on here. Appreciate you guys all for tuning in too. You can hit me up at I am Eric Vincent on all my social media. Tap in with me at Clutch Points. Do all of my beat reporting there with them. I will be locked in with the Pistons all season as a beat reporter. Going to be as close as I can, trying to get the scoop and the skinny for all of the fans. Just try to get a little background as we can. You can follow me over on my YouTube page as well, Top Title Sports. I'll be doing some recaps over there this season, be doing some content online, and I would love to see you guys over there to be a part of it, man. I'll definitely get you on the show if you guys have time too, man. I really appreciate you. You having me on.
I got nothing but time, man. I quit my last job, so all I'm doing is full-time podcasting. Which, hey, man, I love doing podcasting. I love doing shows like this. And I know I have people in here that have been probably with me for the last 4 years, and I absolutely love it. They never miss a show. We got the same 10 people that watch our shows every week, and I absolutely love them, man. They're the best. But once you get into these podcasts, man, it's kind of addicting. Like you just I got to do another one. I got to do another one. But yeah, I'll definitely come on your show whenever you want me on, man. You got my number. You can text me. I'll show up anytime.
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you. You're a great staple in the Piston community, man. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it, man. Like I said, I wanted to have you on it again because last time you were on, a lot of people loved just your insight on the team and the amount of positive comments we got. They were requesting you again, so I had to hit you up. I was like, I gotta get Eric back on. People love them. So I know a lot of people are getting ready for the Lions. I know I'm probably gonna go eat some food, but peace, guys. See you guys next week.